Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth and the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. The murder of Presi Bavver. The Blauwevmans County Police Station was a horrible place for officers and criminals alike. The station had been built in 1932, and to most everyone's sadness, had been one of the only buildings to hold up during the Second World War. The station was built from old, withering bricks, and the man who was in charge of keeping the ivy along the sides of the building contained was too busy hitting on women to actually get the job done. The inside was even worse. The oak doors were creaky on their rusty hinges, and the musty concrete jail cells were cracking due to the recent heat surge the Netherlands were experiencing. The small cubicles for officers were tight, and the air conditioning rarely worked. To make things worse, the computer system was terrible. Sometimes, officers would sit for hours just to wait for a 12-page document to load. It didn't help that Blauwevmans was a city in the middle of the mountains, away from most metropolitan. Just getting into the next county took 2 hours. The only good thing that had happened to the police station in the past month was that the exterminator had came. The rats were gone, and they wouldn't be back. But from where Evian van Beek was sitting, she swore she saw a rat scurry past the chief of police's office as she and Lucas Hoysk waited to be called in for questioning. Evi tapped her feet on the wooden floors, anxiously looking around. The police station was crowded for a Sunday night. Some officers were packing up to leave for the night. Others cursed as their computers failed to upload their files. It looked like one of the cops, Sergeant Shea, was having a small party. Evi leaned over her seat, watching some of the officers chat and shove forkfuls of red velvet cake into their mouths. Maybe a birthday? Evi slouched back into her chair and sighed. Lucas bit his lip, staring curiously at the ceiling. Evi knew that look. "What denk je wel net?" Evi asked, pushing a dark hair out of her face. Lucas shot Evi an alarmed look. "Evi," he hissed, "talk ahead angles." Evi gave him a puzzled look. They were both studying English as a world language. They were almost fluent. But why practice for the upcoming test when they're in a police station about to get questioned as suspects of a murder? Evi looked around before repeating her question. "What are you thinking about?" Lucas rubbed his strawberry blonde hair. "They can't understand us if we talk in English," he said, his Dutch accent well enunciated. Lucas tilted his head to the side, indicating the officers eating cake behind him. Lucas continued, a worried look on his face. "I know the plan didn't exactly go according to plan. Evie shot Lucas a deadly glare. "Lucas, we killed." Evie peered over her shoulder, making sure the officers weren't paying any attention to them. She lowered her voice. "Presi. We killed Presi, the mayor's son, but they have no proof it is us. All they saw was the security tapes," Lucas stated, exasperated. "We were running. So what? That could mean we were running away from the murderer." Evie bit her lip. "We did it. We have to confess. If we don't, and they find out it was us, there will be much bigger." "Is it consequences?" Lucas shook his head. "Consequences, you mean? But what if they don't find out it was us? We could lie and be done with this. And what if they do?" Evie hissed loudly, tears sparkling in her eyes. She tugged at the neckline of her purple shirt. "Either way, I do not want to end up in Gavanjanus." Lucas frowned. "I'm afraid neither lying nor telling the truth will get you out of jail. At least we have a shot if we lie, but that is not the right thing to do. We could get a worse sentence if they do find out it was us." "Lucas, we killed someone," Evie cried. Small tears began to flow from her blue eyes and stream down her face. Lucas looked over at her helplessly, gritting his teeth. His knuckles were white as they gripped the seat of his chair. "They're going to call us in any minute," Lucas said softly. "So pick your poison." Evie dried her tears, sighing sadly. She looked up and pointed to the chief's door. "Lucas, the chief. Ich kommt heran." Evie gasped. Lucas suddenly looked very worried, but he put on a fierce face. As the chief turned the brass doorknob from the inside, Lucas took a deep breath and whispered, "Let's go, Evie." Barvan de Vries was a tall man with wispy black hair and piercing dark blue eyes. He wore his shiny gold badge proudly and was never without a gun under his sweater. In the work area, he wore his gun on his utility belt. Much to the chief's pleasure, the weapon seemed to intimidate the teenage suspects in front of him. The two, according to his files, were seemingly clean, but were the primary suspects for the murder of Presi Bavver, Evian van Beek, and Lucas Hoysk. Chief de Vries's lips curled. This would be fun. The chief put on a menacing face and looked from Lucas to Evie. The girl was fidgeting slightly, almost unsure of what to think. Lucas, however, seemed relatively calm. It was an odd combination of suspects, especially partners in crime. But then, many odd people had entered the Blauwe-Mans County Police Station. This pair would be no different from the rest. But, the chief thought, odd combinations often have, shall we say, different stories. Barvan tapped his door with his knuckles. His eyes trained on Evie. His first victim. The chief gestured to Evie, whose eyes widened. Evian van Beek? Evie bit her lip. It looked as if the girl was blinking back tears. "Ja," she answered. De Vries nodded approvingly. "De tide is here. Komen Evien, the chief said, clapping his hands. Levi looked desperately at Lucas, and then at the chief. Alsjeblieft, een moment? She asked in a small voice. Lucas gave Levi an alarmed look as the chief processed what the suspect had just said. De Vries scowled, but gave in. Prima, the chief muttered, his eyebrows furrowing. Fine, Levi repeated in English, sighing. She turned to Lucas. I'm telling the truth, she said sternly. It's the right thing to do. Lucas looked angry for a moment, but then softened. His cheeks were red. Fine, he spat. But if we get out of here with no mark on our permanent record, you can thank me. So you are still... Levi stopped, eyes glancing toward Barvin. At least I will have done something for the good of the world. I am, as they say, avenging his death. If that is right context. Levi lowered her voice. We killed him. Jail time, nothing, will take that fact away. Sergeant Patrick Shea stepped out from the open room. His party was being held. He had been leaning on the doorsill and listening to the pair's conversation since they had been seated. Sergeant Shea nodded to the chief. Meneer De Vries, Shea addressed the chief. Barvan raised an eyebrow. Ja? He asked. The sergeant gestured to the teens. Shea turned and gave Lucas and Levi a small smile. Then, in crisp English, he said, These are our killers, sir. Evian van Beek and Lucas Hoysk, convicted of the manslaughter of Presi Bavver, the Getaway. The door was waiting for him, already open for a quick entrance into the inconspicuous car. Tony ran as fast as he could, chucking the duffel bags full of money into the back as he more or less dove into the passenger seat. Drive! Tony screamed at Jackie. Drive, goddammit! Drive! Jackie. Scaletta did not need to be told. Before Tony had even entered the vehicle, he had popped the clutch into drive. Before the passenger door was even closed, he tore down the road like a bat out of hell. Tires screeched like a woman getting murdered as the unnoticeable but powerful car growled down Lexington Street. A traffic light had just turned red as the car ran through it, narrowly avoiding collision with an expensive luxury vehicle. The driver honked loudly, laying on the horn in shock and frustration. But neither Jackie nor Tony D'Amato gave it much notice. They were too fixed on the wailing of police car sirens already going off in the distance, coming after them. We did it, Jackie! Tony screamed more than said. We just robbed Lexington Bank, the cream of the crop. We are gold, my friend. Jackie only nodded in reply. He was too busy focusing on the road, maneuvering cars, hopping onto the sidewalk and the wrong side of the roads to say anything. Tony was shaking and excited as a child who had just scored the game-winning touchdown in a pee-wee football game. But Jackie was calm and collected. A professional getaway driver, if there ever was one. Just a little bit further, we'll be over state lines. Then after that, on our way to Mexico to live like kings, Jackie. We did. Whoa, look out! A wall of police cruisers was creating a blockade to the entrance of the interstate. Tony grew nervous immediately. Visions of himself and Jackie being torn up by a barrage of Tommy gun fire flashed through his mind. Torn apart by bullets as they did to Bonnie and Clyde. However, Jackie had prepared for this. He knew what to do. "Hold on to something," Jackie said, with the coolness of an ice-cold killer. His face was determined, his eyes focused. "Hold on," Tony shouted. "Hold on to what?" He reacted just in time as Jackie popped the wheels on the shoulder of the entrance, scraping the passenger side of the car against the cement barriers that blocked cars from falling down the steep hill. "Fuck! Fuck! Fuck!" Tony shouted. Sparks flew like crazy fireworks off his side of the vehicle, he noticed with wide eyes. The getaway car had attacked the weak spot of the barricade. Cops dove out of the way in fear as the driver's side of the car clipped a police cruiser in the rear bumper. The collision was hard enough to knock the law enforcement car on its side. Gunshots fired harmlessly as the getaway car merged with the interstate traffic. The road to freedom. "We made it! Holy shit! Jackie, you old son of a bitch! We made it!" Tony hollered. He was shaking in excitement and fear. A bit of shock had also clouded his mind. He vomited quickly but violently out the window. "Calm down, Paisan," Jackie said calmly. "We aren't free yet. Look behind us." Tony swore when he turned his head to see black and white cop cars following behind. Traffic had pulled over to the sides of the road to allow a path for the police to drive through. Tony had visions of Moses parting the Red Sea upon seeing this. "What do we do?" Tony asked, horrified again. "You let me do my job," Jackie told his childhood friend calmly. "You did your part. Now it's my time to shine." He gunned the accelerator once again. The engine of the car growled like a lion on the attack. Except they were the antelope, and the police, the lions. The rear windshield imploded with a sharp snap as glass fell to the floor of the car. "They're shooting at us!" Tony yelped. Another bullet hit the metal of the car's exterior with a loud knocking sound. "Well?" Jackie told Tony, like a father teaching his son a lesson. "Fire back." Tony reached between his legs for the weapon. A Thompson machine gun with a 50-round drum loaded. He racked the first shot into the chamber, aimed intently at the leading cop car, and squeezed the trigger. The gun went off, sounding like a barrage of drums, vibrating off the walls. The car Tony had been aiming at lost control and collided with a semi-truck that was pulled over. One down. How many more to go? Tony asked himself in his mind. "Good job," Jackie said calmly, still focusing on winding through the traffic on the highway. Most drivers had gotten the message and pulled off where they could. But a few stubborn ones kept on going like nothing was happening. Great. Now we have a cop murder to add to our list, Jackie's mind told him. He shook his head to clear the thought away. The car stank of burnt gunpowder, and a ringing accompanied the ears of both men as Tony loaded another drum into the rifle. "Don't shoot unless they shoot first," Jackie spoke. "Or if they get too close, even still, try aiming for the tires." "Don't worry, I don't intend on killing anybody unless I have to," Tony replied. Jackie was thankful for this sentence from his friend. They weren't murderers. There was no one else Jackie would aid robbing a bank with. A bullet shattered a small hole in the windshield. It narrowly missed Jackie's throat. His blood went cold as he felt the ripple of air pass by his skin. A second one ripped another spot through the windshield, this one hitting its mark. "Fuck," Tony yelped, throwing his right hand onto his left arm. Blood stained his fingers. Another barricade stood ahead. This 1-3 rows deep, with paddy wagons and cruisers blocking the interstate. "Tony!" Jackie shouted, momentarily taking his eyes off the path to look at his friend. "Are you okay?" "Yeah," Tony spoke through gritted teeth. "Just took some muscle and skin. Missed the bone. I need you to lay some covering fire when I say," Jackie told him. "What are we gonna do, buddy?" Tony asked. His pain was, at the moment, dulled by the fear that their escape had come to an end. No Mexico. The bullet would have to be extracted from his arm. "Just wait," Jackie replied, his voice getting lower and lower as he repeated, "Wait, wait, wait. Okay, now. Fire," Jackie screamed. Tony leaned out the window and sprayed a barrage of bullets out of the end of the machine gun, aiming over the cops' heads. It was enough to scare the uniformed men to duck behind their vehicles as Jackie screamed the car over the grassy area between the lanes of the interstate, straightening on the wrong side as family cruisers and semi-trucks came dangerously close to head-on collisions with them. He rolled back onto the right side of the road once they had cleared the barricade, passing a sign that happily welcomed the two into the next state. "We made it!" Tony shouted. "Holy Christ, Jackie. You did it. We are clear. Bravo, paisano." They had made it into the next state. Tomorrow morning, they would ditch the vehicle and get into another one to make the drive into Mexico. They were not safe yet. There was still the worry of a nationwide manhunt or getting stopped at the border. But for now, Jackie Scaletta and Tony D'Amato were safe. They continued down the interstate. Attempted murder. New case, Noella. Thump. A stack of files in a manila folder lands on the desk in front of me, sending my papers flying. Great. Now my spotless office has papers everywhere. I huff and look up to glare at my boss's departing back. No case summary? He turns back, talking a few strides into the office and closing the door behind him. That's the good thing about being one of the top-ranking detectives in our firm. I get an office to myself. Unlike others such as Otto and Shorlick, who have to share one, it gives the privacy and thinking space one needs when uncovering confidential cases. Young woman, aged in mid-20s. Her name is Enya Brown. Enya Brown? The Enya Brown I rescued from a dark alley a year ago? I turn back to him, nodding in acknowledgement. She's reported claims of stalking and attempted murder. Interesting. Any reason why I was given the case instead of the others? I might be a detective chief superintendent in our firm, but there should be plenty of others qualified to take this case, especially those in his inner circle who don't have other things such as helping to run the faculty to do. Salim's in Egypt, Henrik's in Germany, Jericho's sick, and Manuel, Maxime, and Molino are busy. I don't want anybody else but the best detectives for this case. It's pretty serious, and there's little evidence at this stage. Only the best could pull it off. He pauses. Oh, and the client specifically asked for you. Make the Annery Feralis Detective Agency proud Noella. Then he departs, leaving me to ponder the case. That still leaves Jane and Danny unaccounted for, and I have no doubt he knew that. But what's happened to Enya since that night in the alley? I told her to contact me if anything was amiss, and I've talked to her since then. But it's been precisely 13 months, 2 weeks, and 16 hours since I rescued her from the alley, and the incidents date back at least 2 years. Why now? It was 8:30 in the evening, and I'd stayed back at work a bit longer to finish up writing a case report. The weather was miserable, having rained just minutes before, and the cobblestones were slick with water. A yellowed glow came from the rustic street lamps along the pavement, limning the edges of my briefcase with gold. Then I heard the scuffles, the thud, and the scream. Alarmed, I raced towards the sound, approaching silently as to not raise any alarm. It came from the far reaches of an alleyway that, from experience, I knew to be a dead end. The scream sounded female. The grunt that followed was male. I peered into the alleyway to see an auburn-haired female struggling against a bulky, dark-haired male's solid grip. She was pinned to the wall, and the brute was touching her in awful places, pulling at her clothing and drawing a dagger as she fought back. She stilled at the sight of the knife, and knowing her chances were slim, I slipped silently down the alleyway. Within moments, I had my arms around the brute's neck, and a foot Hooked behind his ankle, he slashed with the knife. And without a second thought, I'd kicked it from his grasp. With the brute pinned on the ground and his neck held in submission, I choked the air out of his lungs, enough to render him unconscious, but no further. Quickly, I picked up my briefcase, glancing up to the young woman before me. She still hadn't run. "Are you all right?" "I'm okay, I suppose. Thank you." She looked away down the alley. "Will he be okay?" "He's just unconscious. He'll wake up in a few minutes, so we should head off. Do you need somewhere to stay?" She shook her head, but her eyes were distant. I shouldered off my coat, wrapping it around her shivering form. "Come on, girl. Let's get you somewhere safe. We'll get you nice and warm." Within 5 minutes, I directed her to a nearby hotel, had her swaddled in blankets and a cup of hot cocoa before her. She was too shaken to ask her any questions, but I could only assume what had happened. I remained with her for as long as I could, heading off home before my flatmate would worry about me. As I stood to leave, I retrieved a business card from my briefcase. "If you need anything, hun, just give me a call. I'm happy to help anytime you need it." I slipped it onto the table in front of her and quietly let myself out. The card on the table before her read DCS. Miss Noella Anderson, Anari Ferrales, Detective Agency, PH 0427738813, email noella@afta.org. Peeking my head into Skorlik Kuhn and Otto Schuster's office, it comes as no surprise that Otto is playing video games, and Skorlik is sitting on the windowsill reading a book. "New case, fellas. Briefing in my office in 10. An acknowledging grunt from Shorlick. "But I'm in the middle of the boss level, Noella. If you make me go now, I'll lose all my progress." Otto whines. "Suck it up, Otto. I've given you 10 minutes. That's enough. You shouldn't be playing video games anyway. You know that." He whines again, and I leave them to their activities, returning to my office. 10 minutes later, Skorlik enters my office, dragging a sullen Otto behind him by the wrist. We discuss the case, examining the details given and the evidence provided, both photographed and in hard copy. Skorlik and I figure out a plan forward, while Otto sulks. He'll confirm the DNA sample, while I trace emails and calls to Enya. Then we'll interview neighbors and retrieve security footage, then assemble the evidence and incriminate the offender. "What did you find?" I ask my co-workers. "DNA specimen confirmed," Skorlik says curtly. "Insights, Mr. Kuhn. There were a few sets of DNA on the letter, including Enya's own, but I narrowed down the suspect list to 2 brothers, Avery and Scott Lancaster, and another man called Jeremiah Hayes. They're the ones that fit Miss Brown's description. Mr. Hayes is suspected to be a friend of the 2 brothers. He could be involved with the case." Skorlik Kuhn sights back at his chair and glances at Otto Schuster, the other detective on my team for this case. "Anything new, Mr. Schuster?" "Quit the formalities, please. Nothing new, but I have a question." Skorlik Were both brothers' DNA on the letter? Indeterminate. Why? Unconfirmed. Well, I personally think the brothers are twins. Just saying. Any evidence, Otto? No? Search the database, though. I get the feeling they are. I search the database, and sure enough, they're twins. Paternal twins at that. Huh. Look at that. Otto was right. They're identical twins, which explains why it's determinate. They have the same DNA. Skorlik nods, and Otto grins smugly. Well, fellas, guess we have our list of suspects. I traced the anonymous threat emails and calls to Miss Brown, to Avery Lancaster's house, and areas that he's reportedly visited. Oh, and it's not listed in the case. But after she was cornered in the lane, the ID card was found on the unconscious man, and it said, Avery P. Lancaster, precisely the person all our other evidence has pointed to. Other evidence, such as him being one of Ennia's ex-boyfriends and being one of Ennia's suggestions of the suspect. That Avery guy must be some sort of creep, considering the things on that file, Otto commented. I wonder what his middle name is. Peter? More like P for psychopath, I mumble under my breath. Psychopath starts with S idiot, Otto says, turning to Skorlik. He puts his hands up, trying to tell Otto it wasn't him, but Otto gives him a skeptical look. Dumbass, it starts with P. Skorlik mumbles, glancing back at me. Meeting over. I get up to leave as they start to squabble. Psychopath starts with P, Otto. You should have learnt that in high school, I say, leaving Skorlik's relieved face and Otto's infuriated expression behind me. Walking door to door in Avery Lancaster's neighborhood, Skorlik, Otto, and I have found very little. The young family that lives across the road said that he's a nice guy that tends to keep to himself, but they'd only moved in recently, so could not provide much detail. The lesbian couple and the old man living either side didn't know anything of interest. Overall, there wasn't too much evidence that they could provide, but they agreed to let us view their security feeds that had a view of his house. That only leaves interviewing Avery himself. Knock, knock. The hollow sound reverberates through my fist as I knock on Avery Lancaster's front door. Good morning. Is there anything I can do for you? Avery's puzzled face steps out from behind the door. Yes, sir. I am Detective Chief Superintendent Noella Anderson, and these are my colleagues, Otto Schuster and Skorlik Kuhn. We would like to talk to you for a minute, if that's okay with you? Of course. Is anything wrong, miss? He looks genuinely oblivious and concerned, and I'm nearly convinced he could be a great actor. We'll speak inside, please. Was it my brother? I told him that rock adventure was a bad idea. I raise a brow. Your brother is fine. If we may? He lets us in, leading us through impeccably neat rooms and into the dining room. It's business time. Do you know why we're here, Mr. Lancaster? If it's not my brother being a doofus, Then no, I don't. Should I know? Perhaps. We are here to ask you a few questions about Enya Brown. Brief pain flickers through his expression. Is Enya okay? He says, barely a whisper. Considering what's been happening in her life lately, she is doing rather well. You wouldn't happen to know anything about her recent activity, would you? No, I don't. I haven't spoken to her since we broke up, and I haven't seen her since. Interesting. Did you know that she's filed a case for stalking and attempted murder with the AFDA? What? You are the prime suspect, and all the evidence leads to you. So if you could tell us the truth, that would be greatly appreciated. He nods. Now tell me again, when did you last see her? About 2 years ago. We went out with a few friends, but I didn't really talk to her. It was still awkward from the breakup. Right. Was anything of notice said? Scott said she was hot. Enya ignored me most of the evening. But no, nothing of notice. Now why did you and Enya break up? She was going to study overseas, and my grandmother had just died, so the timing wasn't great for either of us. It pained us both greatly, but we knew it was the best for both of us. Neither of us have been in a relationship since, at least as far as I'm aware. Would you be jealous if another guy showed interest in her? No? I would respect Enya's decision to move on. She deserves to enjoy her life. Oh, come on, Otto bursts out. Quit the sappiness. If you haven't seen her in 2 years, then explain why 1 year ago she was attacked in a dark alley by a man fitting your description, wielding a knife. A man, I might add, that had an ID card with the name Avery Lancaster on it, or why your name was encoded into a death threat letter to Enya, Shorlick adds, and why the threatening calls and emails were traced back to your very house. Avery gets paler and paler with every question, as if realizing that he has no way out, realizing that he didn't hide his tracks well enough, and he was caught. I don't understand what you mean. You hear what we said, Mr. Lancaster. Your DNA was found on the letter, and there are all these other cases of evidence. Do you mind if we have a look around? We show him our search warrant, and he nods solemnly. Avery leads us around the house, showing us through the different rooms of his house. There's nothing much of notice in any of the places we search. This guy is pretty good at hiding his evidence. And this is the guest bedroom. My brother keeps some of his stuff here sometimes. We nod and have a poke around. We're just about to finish up when I spot a discarded plastic bag in the wardrobe. What's that, Mr. Lancaster? I don't know. Some of my brother's stuff. He visits sometimes and keeps some stuff here. I don't monitor his stuff. This room is the only place I allow him to put his stuff wherever he wants, and I won't clean it up. May we look inside? Of course. We open the bag curiously, with our latex gloves on, as not to disturb the possible specimens. The bag opens to reveal a pair of worn, woolen, fingerless gloves, a roll of sticky tape, an ID card bearing Avery's details, and a few folded pieces of paper. Skorlik pulls out one of the pieces of paper and reads it aloud for my dearest Enya. Really, I thought you'd have noticed by now. Our connection is true, and I love you dearly. Must you always hide from me? Show me what you can do in bed. Can you do that? Otherwise, I will finish what I started that night in the alley. If I can't have you, no one can. Terror upon you, shall you not oblige? Take what you want from me, but I will always prevail. Do not fail me. Love from your dearest. I miss you. Dark, much? But that sounds an awful lot like a jealous lover's letter. Did you write this, Mr. Lancaster? Avery shakes his head, and his face is deathly pale from fear. Fear for Enya, or fear for himself? Well, you have a lot of evidence against you, sir. I would recommend you start telling the truth, or you'll be imprisoned for lying to authoritative figures. Understood? I only wish to tell you the truth, ma'am. I did not know that letter was here, nor do I know who wrote it. May we take it for evidence? Of course, ma'am. And with that, Otto, Shorlick, and I take our leave, sealing the evidence in decontaminated specimen bags and leaving Avery's ashen face behind. So, what do you think of our adventure today? Avery's house sure was suspicious. Yeah, I think we have enough evidence now, Otto adds. I think Avery is innocent, Skorlik murmurs under his breath. I cut my glare across the table to him. What? Did I hear that correctly? Otto shrugs. You do understand, Shorlick, that every single piece of evidence we have points to Avery Lancaster. But maybe that's what the criminal wants us to think. Everything points to Avery. But if he truly did it, there would be some degree of a cover-up. This is all in the open. It's too easy. Mr. Lancaster's DNA is on every specimen. His pining for a lost love threaded through threat letters, class and emails, all traced to his house, a house his brother visits often. Think, Noella, think. Are you saying it was Avery's brother, Scott, that is doing this? What would be his motive, though? It makes no sense, Skorlik. It's obvious. It was Avery. Check the cams for the night of the alley attack. I pull up the feeds from various residents' security cameras and go back to the date of the attack. We watch as a car pulls up in front of Avery's house, and Avery gets out, knocking on the front door. Must be Scott, I conclude. And sure enough, a second Avery greets him at the door. They go inside, and about an hour later, one of the Lancaster twins comes out holding a plastic bag, and there's a lump under his hoodie near his hip. The knife he pulled on Enya. Turning up the audio, we hear a voice yell from inside the house. Can you get me milk while you're at the supermarket? Thanks. See ya, Scott. Scott comes outside and gets into one of the cars that had been parked outside before he'd arrived, presumably Avery's, and drives off. Why didn't he take his own? We skip ahead to the dates of the emails and calls from Avery's house, and Scott had visited on every single one of them. Didn't Avery mention something about Scott having the hots for Enya? And he seemed pretty concerned for her, Otto suggests. But Skorlik and I's attention is elsewhere. The letter. The realization dawns on both of us, and as I peer over his shoulder, I notice something I hadn't when he'd read it out. Each sentence is on a new line, and the first letter of every sentence forms another message. From Scott L. My face slackens with the realization. Do you see it, Skorlik? He nods solemnly. It all makes sense. Their DNA is the same. Being twins, Scott tried to avert the attention from him, turning it on his identical twin. But ultimately, his diversions failed. He's been found out. Otto. It was Scott. The letters and the ID card prove it. It was Scott, I murmur. So it was actually Scott C. Lancaster, the evil side to his angelic brother Avery, Otto says, in an exaggerated, scheming voice. Seems to me like his initial was a foretelling. C for criminal. He smirks, and we all burst out laughing, the relief enveloping me that Enya would finally be safe and that we'd done it, off with their heads. Yes, Mother. I sigh into the line, wrapping the infamous cord around my finger. Of course, I'm fine. What? No, it's not like I'm in the States. This is Britain, God damn it. Mother, no, I think you should lie down for a while. Call Dad as well. He'd fancy a visit from you, I'm sure. And just like that, my hand smashes back on the receiver. Blood, Britain, eh? Who could ever have imagined Olivia, from the apartment up above, would pursue law in England? Well, for starters, certainly not her. A buggy sweeps by my rusted telephone box as I take a single drag on the cigarette laid before me in its little red tin box. Rainwater nearly splashes up on my impeccable outfit, the poor thing. I shake my fist at the driver, but there's no use. The lad's already way off into the distance. What would the world be without Britain? Perhaps every world has some sort of Britain as well. Little men in their fancy outfits, always circling each other with arguments. At least they're nothing like that bloody American man. What was his name again? Nixon, was it? Yes. Terrible, terrible people doing amazing things. I've always found it fascinating, you know. My red kitten heels splash against more rainwater. I curse myself silently for not bringing that little red umbrella with me. Perhaps I could pick it up on my way to the office. Their stares don't avoid me as I run by. I can catch those disgusting men from the corner of my eye, all staring. It's not as if I'm putting on a show, is it? Still, I can only imagine what they see. A French woman, plush red lips against fair skin. I even tried to wear my longer crimson dress today. Turns out, that effort proved fruitless. I jump into the office, gasping as the heat blasts me behind the wooden panels. In the background, I can hear softer jazz clashing with news reports from the telly, as if warring between each other. What is it this time? I ask Bonnie, the sharp woman sitting at the desk, or as she urges me to call her, Bonbon. Ridiculous name. Her bleached curls pull up nicely against her dark skin and bright yellow dress. She swears it's from that damn swinging Britain stage we're going through right now. She shrugs, leaning over to stare at the Pixel E screen. Those Beatle kids are going to broke up, she snaps back, leaning into the plush sides of her chair. The corners of her mouth edge up slightly as she stares at the messily done bun in my hair. How do you get your hair like that? Oh, I grin back, picking up the large manila folder before her. Do shut up. What's our next case? It's hard to say. Bonbon plucks a pen from her container, absent-mindedly scribbling on her schedule paper. They ordered us to take up all the spots for the month. All of them? My eyebrows shoot up as I feel my face grow red with anger. The audacity. Who do they think they are to order us around? There are nearly 1 million clients in London, all looking for lawyers. And yet this flash bastard thinks he's important enough to take all her attention. This is the case. She heaves more mundane folders toward me, all packed to the brim with paper. I know it's a lot. You might even need to help us with this one, I tease. Not my style. Bonnie slumps back. Olivia, some of us girls aren't meant to be smart. We're just supposed to smile and look pretty. Some of us don't get enough funds to go to Oxford either, or travel back and forth from France. I ignore the dig. It's odd how Bonnie and I see ourselves as adults, despite both of us only just being able to drink. Right when I graduated from Oxford, I got accepted into this law firm, the best one in London. Sometimes I wonder if I'd even stay here without the job. Britain is just so dreary. It's quite depressing, especially at first glance. Maybe that's all it deserves. My heels clack down the hallway as I desert the drab lobby. When I finally reach my own personalized office, I feel as if I'm at home. I strut to the opalescent gramophone occupying the corner, placing a thin record upon it. Half my collection is sonata, while the other is all that new style of rock. I believe those critics have begun to call it punk. Whatever the case, it's the only connection I have to my generation. I often find myself discarded in this new, modern era. People believe there is to be so much more, but I can't possibly imagine what could come next. I sit at my small desk, shuffling through the papers that have been so graciously presented to me without haste. How does one look through these documents with such excitement, anyhow? I prefer the thrill of the courtroom to the dual sensation of passing through files and archives. Nevertheless, one needs to begin a task for them to finish it. After nearly 2 hours of reading, Bonnie returns to my office with a cup of tea and the person I'd least like to see right now. Darcy places a hand onto my desk, snatching the tea from Bonnie's hand. "I thought you'd like some tea," she whispers in an accusatory manner. "I see," I groan. "So much so that you grabbed it straight from Bonnie's hand." Darcy snaps her long white fingers. "Leave, pest. Make yourself useful and sort through the files." I all read. Our boss pulls her emerald-colored nails through her platinum blonde hair. "Who's to say I didn't mess them up while you were wasting time?" Bonnie's gum snaps as she pulls it back in from its bubble. "Course, miss," as her thin legs carry her off down the drab walls. Darcy smashes her fists on my desk before traveling to the gramophone, looking down with distaste. "I find all parts of your music taste disgusting." "Thanks," I mumble, returning to my work. "Now that you've given me some tea and made fun of my music, you can leave. I simply can't figure out how you work with this rock in the background." "First of all," I sigh, throwing down some more papers to the floor. Darcy's eyes widen, but I only shrug. "There's a method to my madness. They taught me some amazing things in your British college, you know?" "Ah, yes," she laments. "The French girl decides to bless us with her knowledge. You know." Darcy dumps more papers onto the floor. "In London, we don't do things with madness. We are intelligent, young women in a time of enlightenment. By the way, I didn't notice you at the Women's March last week. Were you busy?" "Darcy," I reply hastily. "You know I'm all for women's rights. Of course, there are things that I'd rather be doing than marching for them." "What?" she squawks, almost knocking over a clock now leaning dangerously toward the ground. She attempts to upright it, only to leave it tilted on its side. I suppose it's for the best. It's not like I often leave this small office. But then, if we march for it, people ridicule us. I'd rather work on letters to Parliament. And pray tell, where are these letters? I feel my face grow red as I bolt up. There better be a point to this meeting. Darcy backs away from my outburst, sighing. "I wanted to ask you what you thought of the case. Dr. Sherman came into his house late at night." I recall the words from the page now lying on the checkerboard carpet. His daughter was still at the secondary school's dance recital, one she only feigned interest in. Darcy raises an eyebrow. "I didn't remember anything like that in the case. I only assumed apologies. I'm sorry. Alice just brought a lot of attention to herself. Anyway, where were we? The very beginning, I believe. Precisely." I pretend not to notice the acid in her voice. Dr. Sherman swears that he was missing a certain object from his house. However, the object seems to be missing from the case. That's what I wanted to show you. Darcy nods. She flicks a paper toward my desk, containing only a black and white picture. I squint between the grainy pixels, making out an image. He's really suing for a hat? That hat costs over $100,000. Darcy discloses, snatching the photo back into her brown briefcase. But then, why is he suing for $1 million? I ask, still incredulous. He believes Blake Connery stole the hate. She adjusts her glasses before turning her back on me. Didn't you read the report? Of course I did. She sniffs at the outburst. Mr. Connery went to Sherman's house to go over their last meeting. Something about therapy, I believe. Perhaps this case could help you? Darcy points a pen towards me. You could use some anger management, and with that, the dastardly woman exits stage left, a smug smile still plastered on her face. Is it possible to hit a glass ceiling when your boss is a woman? Still, it's hard for me to believe it. And so you see, the red-faced man before me spits. That's why the hammer of justice must be brought down. My house was ravaged by this madman. I wouldn't dare say it for any of my other patients, but Blake Connery is a psychopath. Well, I can sense his anger rising even higher than mine as I look over the report. When you gave us access to your notes, it didn't seem as if Mr. Connery had any sort of mental illnesses besides his bipolar disorder. Exactly. He stands up, almost sloshing tea on my immaculate red dress. When Darcy had permitted me to interview Dr. Sherman, I'd expected someone much less unhinged. Why is it that the mad are always the most composed? He put on a farce. Dr. Sherman sits back down, crossing his hands. It's almost obvious that he's trying to pull some therapeutic shit on me. Of course, it'd take a lot more than that to faze me. Either Sherman's a bad therapist, or he truly is under a lot of stress from losing his hat. He made me believe that he's not a bloody thief. Let's not jump to accusations about the defendant. I place the papers back into their files to stop him from seeing the work I've already done. It wouldn't do for my client to already know I believe he's insane. Oh? A mousy blonde jumps into the scene, perhaps around 16. Nearly the age I was when I first came to this despicable city. Ignore Papa's ravings. He's just angry still, and rightfully so. For a moment, I'm afraid that he'll slap the girl I've already assumed to be Alice. But he laughs it off. Perhaps she has a therapeutic herself. Despite that fact, something bubbles inside of me as I stare at her in the slightly blue dress. It's my most prized possession. I can make you another, Papa. Alice leans down to hug her father's neck. He smiles, then turns back to me, the joy already wiped off his face. What can I say? I have that effect on some people. I'm sure you can, my butterfly, but we must bring down justice. And with that, I'm immediately done. I've gathered almost useless information, and then it daunts on me. This is what it's going to be like for a straight month. Maybe more. This is what I despise about this city. Everything is either gloomy or wonderful. The people, the jobs, the world. But one thing stays the same. In fact, that's the charm of it. Everything is stagnant, orbiting around the world. We all get a chance to be in the spotlight. And sometimes, that's the worst part. I think I have enough information for today. I sigh, placing my tea down with a slow clink. Is it enough to incarcerate the bastard? You're suing him, I remind Dr. Sherman. He's not going to jail? Ha! When I'm done with him, I'm sure that won't be the case. I hired the entirety of the best law firm in the city to work on my case. I can't lose. I'm done arguing with him. On any other day, I'd gladly debate with him until he realizes how much of a damn fool he is. But today, it's almost impossible. The streets are nearly deserted for a crisp May day. I can hear the roars of a crowd in the distance, but there's no one on this street. I check my watch, disappointing myself almost immediately. It's still technically my lunch break, and I haven't found anything useful yet. I'd usually be good and done by now. Instead, I'm stuck in this rabbit hole of a case. No evidence, and I'm surrounded by lunatics. Just my luck, naturally. Eventually, I'm face to face with the source of the crowd's cheering. A band plays upon a large wooden stage, surrounded by small bulbs holding dead string lights. It doesn't take long to find a familiar face. Bonnie? She twists around, staring at me in fear. Her voice comes out way too fast, almost like Dr. Sherman's. Okay, look, don't tell Darcy. I just heard they were playing today, and I'm not telling Darcy, I urge. Anyway, they're pretty good. Better than anyone else on the radio, at least. What's their name? The Hatters. Bonnie shrugs. I know. It's weird. No? I shake my head. More like a coincidence. Ugh. She hangs her tan arms around my neck, jumping to the dark, sporadic beat. Are you still on that case? Well, Bonnie. My voice drifts off before I can dish out a biting comment. Wait. How do you know about the case? She blushes deep red. I might have read it. You did? I laugh incredulously, fixing it immediately after. No, I'm just surprised. That's great. I could use some help. But what made you decide it? Well, Bonnie shrugs. I just wanted to help out, I guess. I'm always just the girl behind the desk, the one with a smile. I saw how you stood up to Darcy, and her thoughts are interrupted by perhaps the cutest man eclipsing the world. A guitar held in his dark hands. His curls are covered in a thin sheen of sweat. as he smiles toward us. It takes me a moment and a jab from Bonnie to realize it's me he's smiling at. Hey, he flashes us a gleaming grin, tipping a tall top hat, clashing directly with his leather and chains. Name's Blake, and just like that, the conversation is ruined. No? The smile fades a little as the band on stage drifts off. I guess he's their central power source. I can't understand. I blush profusely. No, it's not you. I just mean, you're Blake Connery, I assume. Bonnie's eyes flash with fear at the notion. I mean, I know it's random. It's mad, but it's so me. Was it fate that brought us together? He brushes past Bonnie, but for once, I don't see her angry that a man is ignoring her. I can see the emotions warring in her mind. On one side, we know that I'm going to have to possibly rob him of all his money. On the other hand, he's hot. You know my name. Well, I pull out the manila folder, reaching for the picture displaying him I grabbed from Dr. Sherman's office. I also have your file. He doesn't display the reaction I expected. He leans back, staring down at his watch. You're working for Sherman, huh? That seems to be the case. So, Bonbon leans back, grabbing her bright yellow purse. I should probably. She leaves her bleach blonde curls bouncing in the wind. Can I just tell you? I try to imitate his smile, only to completely cringe. That man is clearly insane. That gives him a laugh. It's his daughter, Alice? Now I have to stifle my chuckle. But she's innocent. That's just what she wants you to believe. Say, how about you stick with me, and you win this case for me? I have heaps of knowledge for you. And I suppose you know this because you're an expert lawyer? Dr. Sherman holds all his meetings in his house, Blake recites. I was there lawfully, and I never stole his hat. But we don't have the security cameras. I beg your pardon, Sherman has cameras. And even if he won't give you access, I will. And you lawfully took these? Ya got me there. Blake stares sheepishly down toward the folder. I have connections. And that isn't shady at all. If you've been having a bad time in this city, it's because you haven't been living like me. I know it all. That doesn't answer my question, genius. Look, Connery stares back at the clock again. Are you on a break? I have about an hour or two before I need to return to the office. Sherman cut the meeting short. Have lunch with me. I promise that by the end of it, you'll be swayed to my side. And what does that mean? He produces a wallet, holding up a wad of cash. Whatever Sherman paid you will look like a joke compared to what I can give you. I'll even give you more than just money. Okay. I blush. Let's just lead the way, gladly. Miss Olivia. Blake flashes me another dangerous smile. I believe this will be the beginning of a great union. The voice thief Tom, have you ever been in that situation when you are in a serious emergency, but you can't tell anyone? Well, if you have, you might have a similar story to mine. It all happened last year. I was at McDonald's for my best friend's birthday party when it happened. I was just walking around when a man in a Ronald McDonald costume walked past me. He looked at me and said, "Come here, child." Okay, that was a bit weird, and I was now questioning if this really was a man in a suit. So I kept my distance. That made him mad. I said, "Come here, child." He sneered. By this point, I was freaking out. This man was crazy. I had to warn the others. So that was when I did the only thing I could do. I screamed. That is, I tried to scream. Ronald looked at me and grinned. "Do you want your precious voice back?" he asked. I ran, unable to warn anyone of this monster that was all I could do. And now, 1 year on, I still am. Okay, I know you're wondering, what on earth does that have to do with anything? Well, McDonald's is about to close down, so they're throwing a goodbye party. I'm going to go. I know, my first party in a while. There is but one reason I'm going. My voice. I need my voice back. I would give anything just to hear it again. I'm getting this Ronald McDonald guy back for what he has done. Ronald, my trap has worked. For years I have stolen the voices of children and added them to my collection. Each child has had their life ruined, and they don't have the brains to write a note to warn everyone else. But I have now become bored with my collection, and I decided, why not just capture the kids? I do have an enormous basement to put them in, and who would miss those brats anyway? My plan is simple. Capture all the kids that go to the throwaway party. Tom, the party is on. There are sales everywhere I look. Kids run around like crazy. I try not to get sidetracked by all the sales, but soon find myself in the queue. That's when I saw him, Ronald McDonald. It was time for revenge. Ronald, I can't believe how dumb this kid is. After I took his voice, he still comes to the party. Oh, well, I guess I'm in luck. So far, I have caught 30 kids. I'm going to give this one a jump scare. Tom, wait. Where on earth did that guy go? I sigh. Maybe I might see him again soon. That's when I felt a tap on my back. I turned around, and there he was, Ronald McDonald, his lips a blood-red color. "Come, child," he says. It's all a repeat of the first time we met. I forget revenge and run. And I won't stop this time. Ronald, the kid took the bait. He's running straight into my trap. Now it's time for some fun. Tom, okay. I know you're wondering how I ended up in this trap, but not even I know. I hear a creak As Ronald and MacDonald enter the room, he holds my voice in one hand and a knife in the other. "Do you want your precious voice back?" he asked with a grin of pure evil. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I had no voice. That was when Ronald did something horrid. He killed my voice. He stabbed it. My voice screamed, and my throat went numb. My mission had failed. Ronald laughed, a wicked laugh. It was the type of laugh that freezes fire and melts ice. Then it occurred to me. I was going to die. Ronald, this kid has been an interesting type. The type that I like to turn into food. I seized him by the throat and carried him down a long passageway to the food processor. What food would I turn him into? A child nugget. Perfect. What a snack they will be. I'm drooling just thinking about it. Time to drop him in. Tom, I can't believe this. Pure cannibalism. Ronald let go. I fell down through the machine, landing in a pile of breadcrumbs. Before I could relocate, a huge roller ran over the top of me. I was knocked out cold. When I woke, I was in a freezer, marinating. Ronald MacDonald sure has a bad recipe, I thought. It was cold. I was surprised I wasn't dead yet. Then, out of nowhere, a claw grabbed me and I still shudder to think about it. It dunked me in grease. The grease was boiling. And that's when I realized I was being deep fried. I could feel life draining from my body. I tried to climb out of the grease, but it was too slippery. I was going to be a snack for Ronald MacDonald. By now, I was just a blob of food in the universe. My breathing slowed, and with 5 minutes left, I would be cooked. Every second became a struggle. I was dying. 1 minute left. You can do this, I told myself. 30 seconds left. You can do this, I said, between each gulp of air. 10 seconds. I gave up. The heat swallowed me up the way Ronald MacDonald will when I come out of here. The truth was clear. I couldn't do this. Ronald, ding. The door creaked open and slammed down on the floor. Out came my child nuggets. I licked my lips. Tasty. They smell delicious. I lifted one up and took a bite. Crunchy. Soon I have eaten them all. They should be on the menu. Oh well, I guess it's time to go upstairs. You never know who might be up there, just waiting to be taken. How to rob a library. Harry was ready. Harry hated books. The plan was simple. If he robbed the library, there would be no books to read. No books equals no library. Even if the library wanted to buy new books, they would have no place to put them. Phase 10 of the plan was to burn the library to the ground. The mission was ready to go. Phase 1. Knock out any guards. You will need fry pan and 2 ropes. The guards wouldn't stand a chance. There were only 2 of them anyway. What harm could they do? The answer to that was a lot of damage. The guards had been trained in the martial arts, so if you stood in their way, you were burnt toast. Good thing Harry wasn't bred, or the mission would be even more difficult. He slowly crept through the bushes, holding his fry pan in one hand and the rope in the other. Soon he saw a light getting close. A guard was coming. Piece of cake, Harry thought. This was going to be fun. Ding! The guard fell down to the floor, so he was tied to a tree. 1 down, 1 to go. Slowly, Harry crept out of the bushes and looked around. Where was the guard? "Hey, you! Stop right there!" called a voice from behind him. Time for real fun. Harry swung the fry pan through the air, and with a thunk, it came to rest on the guard's head. Thud. Time for Phase 2 of the plan. Phase 2. Disable the security cameras. You will need the pickaxe to be sure that no one found him out tomorrow. Harry would have to hide a lot of evidence, like knocking out the guards. All he had to do was smash all the cameras around him. There were about 20 of them scattered around the place. Number 1. Harry threw the pickaxe through the air. Bullseye. Number 2. It spotted him before he saw it, but no evidence remains now. Number 3, 4, 5, 6. Too easy. Number 7. Whoever designed this must have thought that 1-year-olds were the only criminals around. The rest were too easy to be recorded. Time for Phase 3. Phase 3. Shoot a window on the top floor of the library. You will need a gun. Harry took a deep breath. He got 1 shot at this. That was all. If he missed, he would have to reshoot. Then it would be more likely people had heard the shots and come to invigilate. Ready, aim, fire. Bang. Smash. The shot couldn't have been better. The window shattered instantly. Time for Phase 4. Phase 4. Climb up the library. Don't do with adult supervision. You will need a rope. Harry took a deep breath. It was time to climb. Using all of his force, he threw the rope up to the smashed window. Then he began to climb up the library. Error in the plan. It has recently rained, and the building is now very slippery. There was no safety gear added to the list. A slip will result in being in a coffin. Harry was about halfway up the 10-meter-high building when the error came into place. He tried to take another step. He slipped and fell. Luckily, he grabbed the rope just in time, so he got away with just a few scratches. So much for a library being a safe place for kids, he thought. Finally, he reached the top. It was time for Phase 5. Phase 5. Take down the librarian. The librarian will never leave. Its post, not even after hours. You will need glue and the remaining rope. Harry looked around, knowing the librarian could be anywhere, watching him. He got to work covering the floor with glue. It was going to be a sticky trap to fall into. Time to do the fun bit. Make noise. One thing you should know about librarians is they hate noise. Shh is one of their favorite words to use. So noise would be the bait to the trap. Harry counted to 3, and then, boom. He rejected at the top of his voice. A second later, he heard footsteps coming towards him. "I'm over here!" he cried. The librarian turned around and scowled. "Come here, boy." She yielded, taking a step forward. Squelch. She soon found herself glued to the floor. Now it was time to tie her up, just for the fun of it. Time for Phase 6. Phase 6. Rob the books. You will need a sack. Harry did that immediately, so I won't record that. Phase 7. Get ready to set the fire. You will need some of the stolen goods and petrol. Fun was rising in Harry's soul. Time to get ready for the fire. He walked up to the tied librarian and grinned. Then he ripped some of the books to shreds. Then he sprinkled them all around the room. That was just the beginning. Time for the petrol. Harry ran around the room, pouring it everywhere. The librarian looked furious. That made Harry feel a sense of achievement. Phase 8. Make sure the librarian won't get killed in the fire. You won't need anything. Harry walked up to the librarian. "I'm sorry, miss, but I'm going to have to throw you out the window," he said. The librarian looked furiously at him. "Did you not know that a librarian never leaves its post?" She screamed angrily. "Oh well," thought Harry, "so be it." Phase 8 has been cancelled. Phase 9. Make sure you can escape easily. You will need a safe place. Harry looked around the room. He couldn't go through the window because the rope would catch fire. He couldn't just stay here, though. He had to do something. It was then that Harry realized that there was a door to the library, so he could just escape through it. Too bad it can't be a bit dramatic, he thought. Phase 10. Light the fire. You will need the matches. Flick. Harry struck the match. Then he walked over to the petrol. Then he set the fire. He now had just 3 minutes to escape. Fire was already everywhere the eye could see. It was time for the next phase. Phase 11. Escape the library. You will need lots of luck. Without looking back at the screaming librarian, Harry raced downstairs. The fire chased him the whole way. It didn't stop until Harry wasn't out of the library. By now, the building was alight in the darkness. So the firemen and police would be here. Phase 12. Throw the sack of books in the river. You will need the sack of books. Harry raced down to the cold, dark river. It was time to get rid of the books. Without hesitation, he threw the books into the murky depths. He smiled as he watched them go. Phase 13. Act innocent. Sirens wailed as the police came to the scene. Time to do the job. Harry walked right past the police, and they didn't notice. Who would expect a kid to break into a library and murder someone anyway? For more information on how to do damage, please go to your local library, if it hasn't been burnt down, and find more of our how-to guides. Unoccupied guest rooms were always hiding things. No one starts out wanting a guest room. It's usually an office first, but then you got fired and can't look at it anymore, so you throw a bed in it that you'll never sleep in. Sometimes it's a kid's room, but they've moved out into a college dorm room. It used to be storage, but then the divorce happened, leaving it depressingly empty. A studio for recording music, but the bass player was in a car accident, and the band broke up. Guest rooms are rarely ever intentional. It's more of a ritual, something society has deemed necessary. The presumption that someone wants to stay with you and your new husband. The poor friend grits their teeth, trying to pretend they can't hear you having sex, trying to make the stiff pillows into something they actually want to lay on, trying to breathe through the Yankee Candle Vanilla Wafer air freshener that's plugged into the wall. The window sticks after an inch, and they can't get it up all the way. They unplug it after everyone is asleep. But the smell has been cloistered in the room for so long that it will never smell like anything else. They put the pillow on top of their face and try to sleep. I stood in the doorway to this guest room without entering it. Untouched rooms give you answers. They offer secrets. This one had last been occupied by a dead girl lying face down in a pool of blood. I found out about the case through the police. That never happened. We didn't get along. Yeah? I barked into phone. A landline I had installed myself. Cell phones bothered me. Is this Alma? It was Detective Herbert Ross. He knew it was me. What did you want? I said, trapping the phone between my ear and shoulder as I took a kettle of hot water off the stove and poured it in my favorite chipped mug with my favorite raspberry tea. If this was about the parking tickets I'd never paid, I still wasn't going to pay them. If this was to call me in about the robbery I solved before them, I wasn't going to tell them how I did it. A girl's dead. I set the kettle down a little too hard. Hot water sloshed around inside. I stared at the swirling steam coming up from the cup. I wouldn't be able to drink it now, and I frowned. The cops never called for my help. I usually embarrassed them by figuring their cases out for them. As a PI, It was rare to get a call like this. "You need me?" "Yeah." "Can you come?" I hesitated for only a moment. "Yeah." "What's the address?" 325 111th Ave, Blaine. "I'll be there in half an hour." I hung up and reached for the tea, hoping I could snag one sip. Burnt tongue be damned. The tea bag had broken. Blaine was a little forgotten. Neighborhood, 30 minutes from Minneapolis, where I lived. The town used to be nice and neighborly, where kids biked until dark and people shoveled driveways for the elderly. Now, it was dirty. Every house had this gray dinginess to it, like everyone had collectively decided 1 year to stop taking care of things. Lawns were overgrown. Cars were rusting away. Big lilac bushes and weeping willows were being taken out or cut down. It was like an anti-homeowners association, uglifying until everything was up to code. I showed up to the house, where only one police car remained. There was yellow tape in front of the door. A crowd of people stood a few feet away, muttering. I looked the crowd over quickly, but no one stood out. I lifted the tape and went into the house. Herbert was standing right inside, apparently waiting for me. "Body has already been taken." He grunted. "That's fine." I didn't get much from dead bodies. I knew Herbert would tell me anything I needed to know, because he had called me. Still, this was awkward. We both were uncomfortable, and it was obvious by how we refused to make eye contact, our hands shoved in our pockets. Husband found her face down in the guest room, stabbed multiple times, said the doors were all locked, no sign of forced entry. "You ask the neighbors if anyone was skulking around?" Herbert nodded. "Nothing out of the ordinary. Seems like everyone keeps to themselves." "What did she do?" "Who?" "The victim." "What did she do for work?" "Oh, her name's Noelle Sharp." "The writer?" I asked, bewildered. She was known for gritty romance novels, turned deadly. Not my thing, but I knew her name. "Yeah, I didn't know she lived here." He nodded again. "They moved here a few years ago." "Geez, why?" Herbert shrugged. "Husband, name Magnus, works for a painting company. She seems to make more dough." "Where is he?" "Already down at the station. Guy's pretty numb. Won't say much." "Yeah, well." His wife was murdered. I wondered if Magnus had convinced Noelle to move here. If he had done that thing that men do when they feel like their wife, or any woman, really, was doing better than them. So he tried to put her in a box, make her talents and abilities small and manageable, easy to swallow. How many shouting matches had they been through before Noelle had conceded to move into this shit box in the middle of Shitsville? "Can I have a few minutes?" I asked. Herbert nodded. I surveyed the entrance area. Stairs right in front of us, leading down into a dark, wet-smelling basement. A tiny hall leading into a kitchen. Living room to the left, dining room to the right. I gave the first floor a once-over. Dirty dishes in the sink. Magazines on the coffee table. The trash was empty. No bag. I went up the stairs and found the main bedroom, bathroom, and the guest room. In the middle of the guest room was a huge blood stain. It was flecked around the room, on the walls, on the bed. The stain was dark against the gray of the carpet. I surveyed the room. One bed, one desk with a small lamp and wooden chair, one plush armchair near the window, overhead light, fixture, fan. There was a closet and a nearly empty bookcase, short and pudgy. Maybe something that one of them had been dragging around for years, couldn't bear to get rid of. Some furniture held on to you. I walked in and thought about the room. The carpet was gray, the walls were white, but it was an off-white. It was like the white had been darkened by something. I sat down in the armchair and looked around, pretended I was staying there. I went over and turned the light on. The fan spun slowly above me. I sat back down in the armchair and looked some more. I realized it had been blue. The walls had been blue, but they had been poorly painted over, once, in a hurry. I got up from the chair and went over to the closet. Inside, there was a plastic bin full of wrapping paper. There was a broken vacuum, a box of empty bags to be used for gifts, and a stack of towels and blankets for guests. I reached out and touched the unused things, linens that had never been unfolded. So, no guests, or maybe guests slept on the couch. And this room, like many guest rooms, was useless. I leant down at the carpet in the closet. I took a small pair of scissors I kept on me and cut off some of the carpet threads, slipping them in my pocket. I sat on the bed, and it dipped, like it was trying to swallow me. The room smelt of dust, and the duvet was covered in butterflies. I lay down and stared up at the ceiling. What was missing in this room? And then I bolted upright and stared at the blank walls and realized there was less dust in a few places. Sections where things had been removed. Pictures. There were no pictures. Herbert was standing outside, trying to get the crowd to leave. I stormed out. "Are you sure this wasn't a robbery?" I asked. Herbert looked over his shoulder, annoyance on his face at my outburst. It made the dispersing crowd turn, new interest compelling them to stay. "Nothing has been taken." "How do you know?" I asked. Husband confirmed. "You don't think, just maybe, he's a little fragile at the moment?" Herbert shrugged. "I'll have him do another walkthrough." I told him I was going to need to come back to the house again. I needed to think. He told me to call him first, before he did. We both knew I wouldn't. But I looked up Noel Sharp on the internet. I found relatives and close friends, and I called and talked to them. Everyone had lovely things to say. I asked about her writing and her hobbies. When I brought up the husband, people also had nothing but good things to say. The mother was the only one who sputtered on and on about how that low life tricked my daughter into marrying him. Worthless career, no family money. She could have married a Rockefeller. I didn't tell her Rockefellers didn't spend time in Minnesota. I found their bank information, social media accounts, insurance. He had taken her name. Previously had been Magnus Brown. He had a brother named Leonard. I called and talked to some more people and asked if they ever had parties. Who were the best friends? Who stayed in that guest room? No one had much to say. There had been a housewarming party, but never another party after that. I called Leonard and asked him about Magnus and Noelle. Leonard was still shocked about Noelle's murder, kept going on and on about how Magnus adored her. Noelle was such a sweet girl. She was so kind to everyone. Great cook. I never read her books, but I knew she was good. Magnus just loved her. I told him to call me if he thought of anything else. I could see from their joint bank account that there was voodoo trouble. There always was. I carefully read through credit card statements, but nothing interesting sprung out. Not even a transaction from a dirty website. I sat by the window in my apartment, smoking until daylight. I waited a few days before going back to the crime scene. I called Herbert on the way to the house, and he told me basic things that I could have guessed. Death due to blood loss, internal injuries, no fingerprints on the knife or around the house, doors locked, nothing broken. Husband staying with a friend. Husband's alibi checks out. Yeah, he was painting a town over. I have the address. I'll take it, I said. I could hear the frown over the phone. I already cleared it with the homeowner. You called me, I said with a shrug that I knew he could hear. He rattled off the address, and I wrote it on a Walgreens receipt. I stopped at a Home Depot and stood in front of the paint chip wall. I stared at the colors, the very berry purple and Derbyshire green. I took out the carpet clippings and held them up over the grays. The carpet color was rock candy. I was at a shabby, buttercup yellow, run-down house that had not been painted in a long time. An old man in an old red sweater answered the door. He was hard of hearing, and his eyes were swallowed up so far into his face that I figured he couldn't see well either. I told who I was. Alma Savage, private investigator, and asked if he had made an appointment to have his house painted. He talked about how this nice fellow had painted his house, how they had drunk beer and talked about baseball. I was confused for only a moment before a young woman with a pixie face and curly hair interrupted us. My father has Alzheimer's, she explained. The house was painted a long time ago. I asked her if either of them had talked to the police. She looked confused. The old man had been the one on the phone with Herbert. I parked in front of the Sharp house and called people again and asked them to tell me things they remembered about Noelle and Magnus. Memories were precious and often wrong, but sometimes They were the only clues one had to go on. Kathy Green was Noelle's best friend. She hadn't been able to talk to me the first time I called. Now she was somber, and her voice wobbled, but she talked to me. I had dinner with them every month. Magnus cooked the best meals. Magnus, I repeated. What about Noelle? Nope. Noelle didn't like cooking. Whenever we were alone, we always ate out. Kathy kept talking, clearly happy to have someone to talk to. They wanted kids so bad, but Noelle had a miscarriage, and they never tried again. Magnus couldn't bear it. Had a vasectomy. I asked her when this happened. She said 4 or 5 years ago. I hung up and went back into the house, walking into the guest room and staring at it, realizing it was perfect size for a nursery. The schooner blue walls that had been painted over with Acacia white, the missing pictures, rock candy carpet. Painte. I lay on the couch in the living room and determined it was too uncomfortable for someone to sleep on overnight. No one stayed with the Sharps. I called Herbert, still lying on the lumpy couch. I need you to check something for me. Alma? Yes. I need you to tell me if she was pregnant. Noelle? Yes. I'll call you back. Chad. I went into the main bedroom and looked over the dresser, where receipts and change and dollar bills and earrings lay. I looked in their closet at all of Noelle's comfortable writing clothes and Magnus's paint-covered clothes. I found photo albums and thumbed through them. Nothing but happy smiles. I looked for medication in the bathroom. Nothing. I dug into drawers and looked through cabinets. Finally, in the garage, I found boxes, unlabeled. I knew it was what I was looking for. I opened them. There were 7 bikes, none matching, all different sizes. Each one had bright pink or bright blue toys, blankets, onesies, pacifiers. Each one contained a cross-stitched rectangle, homemade, Flora Sharp, Theodore Sharp, Maisie, Cooper, Rachel, Kevin. There were photos of the finished rooms, walls different each time. Pinks named Azalea, Flower, Teaberry. Blues named Gentle Aquamarine and Breathtaking. I looked down at the boxes, at all the attempts, all the miscarriages. Kathy Green didn't know about this. Her best friend status was weak, watered down because Noelle was too broken or embarrassed or just didn't think it was anyone's business. No one slept on the couch. No one slept in the guest room. I surveyed the rest of the garage and saw some large, framed photos shoved in the corner behind a lawnmower that was covered with a tarp. I went over and pushed the lawnmower away. They were prints of Noelle's book covers, the missing pictures, and there was a bloody thumbprint on the edge of one, her third book, Dangerous Illusion. My phone rang. I answered it, hands shaking. Was she? I asked, throat dry. She was pregnant. Fuck, I muttered. What? Magnus had a vasectomy a few years ago. We'll confirm that on our end. And if you do? I asked. We both knew the answer. If he'd had the operation, it meant Noelle had cheated. It was motive? I found Leonard's apartment the next day. When he opened the door, he was in a wrinkled t-shirt and boxers. It was 3:30 in the afternoon. His eyes were red, and his hair was unkempt. I told him who I was, and he let me in. He gave me a beer. It was warm. I chugged half of it in one gulp. When I swallowed, I asked, "So how long were you sleeping with her?" Leonard pretended to look confused. I waited. Then, after 4.5 minutes of silence, he put his face in his hands and started crying. I loved her so much. Magnus was always complaining, and she would come over and vent, and we'd drink, and we never meant to. Noelle was pregnant. I told him. His teary eyes grew smaller, beadier. Noelle had found out that day. I pushed on. She left the pregnancy test in the trash, and Magnus found it. You know he had a vasectomy. I didn't wait for him to confirm. Noelle was in the guest room, looking at the nursery she never got, hoping it would work this time. It could be you. And Magnus found her, killed her, and took down the photos of her books. Couldn't bear to see them. All her accomplishments. She had money. Her name meant something. And now his own brother was fucking his wife. How did you know that Magnus isn't staying with you? He's staying with a friend. He hates you. No. He choked out, shaking his head, like that would shake the words out. She only cooked for you. When she came over here to vent and drink and fuck, she'd cook for you. She never did that with him. What do I do? He asked, drowning in how much he hated himself. I looked around the drab apartment before turning my eyes back to him, shrugging. Ever thought about painting the place? Rayner Kelly's Murder Soulmate. People are fools. This was a thought he'd held on to since he was a boy, and it had held true for his entire life till that point. Even as Rayner drove on the roads of his favorite mountain range, he could only think back to the sorts who proved it to him. Those sorts of people he couldn't even be angry at. The kind of idiots that got themselves lost in his favorite places. It wasn't as if he cared for any particular demographic. He liked to hurt them more if they were pretty, more so if they were tame. But he was always one for opportunity. That might have been how he managed his body count. Serial killers without a known type are harder to catch, as far as he'd heard. Though, considering how high the body counts were for easier cases, he had his reservations. It could have been how he killed. While he wasn't exactly messy, he didn't try to be fancy with his targets. He'd done it before. Long, drawn moments with strangers in discreet, abandoned places. But when all was said and done, he was careful. That. And he was a fairly big guy. He was a hard man to escape. Made his marks all the more foolish for trusting him. It wasn't all that late when he happened upon his next mark. A young man, inching to it, really, with a lovely mop of hair just by the side of the road. "Hello, sir. I kinda sprained my ankle. Could you drive me to a gas station or something?" the kid asked softly. He looked embarrassed by the entire situation. Rayner liked that, so he opened his passenger door for him. The kid was asking, after all. He watched as the kid arranged himself on the passenger side, careful to buckle himself in. The kid seemed a mite more cautious now, considering his ankle. Rayner started after that, taking his merry time since the kid wasn't worrying directions. "So, what had you so far out?" Rayner asked with a sideways glance. The kid had been looking out the window, contemplating something, before glancing over to him. "Oh, nothing much, just the scenery," the boy said. "Is it all right if I do some writing here?" "I don't exactly have a charging set up," Rayner said, still playing the Samaritan. The kid took out a small journal. "Sorry to disappoint. I'm a bit old school," he said, trying to look cool. He kinda did if Rayner were at all honest. Rayner could have driven with his eyes closed, but he still only looked over occasionally, seeing the kid scribble away on a relatively clean page in his book. "So, what do you like to write about?" "Bodies." "Oh, what kind of bodies?" he asked innocuously. "Anybody, anything." "Oh," he said, hoping for something more specific. It was well enough that the kid was mostly quiet after that. Rayner wasn't so over-curious of this next body. Couldn't be that clever this far out. Didn't stop him from being a bit disappointed with the answer, what they were, rather than the state they were in. He was still a bit mesmerized with the kid, scratching away on a half-empty journal he was never gonna fill. He wondered, like any man oughta, how the kid managed to see anything past his fringe. But it seemed weird to impose on something like that. That mop would be safe enough to cut when the kid was dead, if he was really in the mood for a trophy. Beyond that, it was the kinda night he wanted to take slowly. The kid was marked for it. Rayner liked to take it slow sometimes. "I still gotta wonder what got you out so late." "I thought I told you." "Oh, whatever," the kid whispered, before asking, "Is it all right to say I've got terrible friends?" "Well, hey, we've all been in bad crowds before," Rayner stated. He liked getting him out of the shell before the fun. "Yeah." Rayner couldn't see where the kid was looking. "I don't think I caught your name." "No, you didn't." "Be fair, I didn't catch yours either." "Ah, I'm Callum." "Let me guess. Your mom had a thing for soap operas?" "No, saints, actually," the kid corrected with a laugh. "My mom had a thing for cryptids." Rayner paused at the non sequitur, thinking over what to say. He could be honest, tell the kid his name, hear that begging catch on his throat later. Or he could lie, make him guess. "It won't matter if I don't know your real name, you know," the kid said, catching his apprehension. Rayner stopped to think about where they were, where the closest safe house was, before saying, "No, I was just surprised. I'm Rayner Kelly." Because he liked the kid's voice. The kid was quiet after that, the only noise from the passenger side being the press of pencil to paper. the sound of a zipper. Then, as if struck by something, he felt a sharp presence through his leg, reacting with a hit to the face, which knocked the kid out. Without much thought as to the proper thing to do, Rayner pulled the knife out. Rayner felt his own hot blood flow from his thigh, and all he could think was, "The little maniac stabbed me." He looked down at his leg, realizing that the kid, with all the luck, nicked something proper. He stole the kid's belt, since he was still out, and made a tourniquet. Frazzled by the entire ordeal, he decided to push the kid out the passenger side and step it to the nearest hospital. A night held up in the emergency room was an interesting addition to his night, just as the injury to his femoral artery was. It was a lucky break, not dying from it, but the kid was still out there. He'd done something foolish, and while Rayner wasn't especially scared of getting caught, he didn't like being blindsided like that. It would be a while after that before he'd think of it again. When he cleaned out his car, Rayner, having killed on the go before, knew that anything could drop from a body. Licenses, gum, IDs, and phones were some of the most incriminating. So he really couldn't afford to keep a dirty car. That's when he found the journal, the last thing the kid dropped before trying to get the drop on him. It was a small, leather-bound notebook, and while at once familiar in the light of day, he could see the character of its use. Kid was careful closing it before pulling that nonsense, and while his car had been a mess for a while, the pages were mostly clean. He flipped through, looking for IDs that might incriminate, and when he couldn't find any, he thought to throw it away. Even without something concrete, the book was filled with the kid's writings, and being by hand, his composition and identity could be ascertained. It was the kinda circumstantial evidence detectives and juries ate up. With the car no longer in disarray, he could throw it out, forget about the one night where the tables almost turned. Altogether again, he thought of the journal, of his hands and head. This was all he was gonna have of that. And for once, amongst the dark thoughts and bad memories, he wanted to keep it. It was only then did he read it, page upon page of poetry. And though it was the simplest thing it could be, he was infatuated with it. The first page, dated a decade before, "I am beauty. I am soft, a crooked rumble to strange human love. She wonders fondly, where are you, dear? While I am dry and rotting here, I am claws. I am fear, a hissing mess to his cruel intent. I am flesh. I am bones." The kid was killing cats back then, writing poetry about it even. Rayner was taken back to his first experiments, neighborhood pets, and the like he dispatched out of curiosity. Though the kid never wrote his age or full name in any of them, he could tell that it was quite a bit more than poetry. It was something he'd never thought to do. Write about them with this intense distance. Some were short and recent. I am small. I am buzzing. My life is sweet. My stripes are fuzzy. Inside, I'm soft. My stingers not. None are things the dead can flaunt. Before he knew it, He felt familiar with the kid, like he was more than a liability, as close as a journal scratched halfway through. It really was anything, anybody, to him. I am lovely. I am strong. My tendons were cut. My fat is gone, lost beneath 2 or 3 feet. There are no feelings the dead get to keep. Rayner thinks, reading through Callum's poetry book, about that night and how it went. Every little lie that he didn't bother telling. How ready he was after saying his name. He wonders, what'll I do when I'm on the prowl again? Hungry for new pretty faces. How long before he thinks about the kid as just a liability again? And not the one that got away. The Breakfast Murder Club. A hush fell upon the gathering at the large clover-shaped mansion that Lucky the Lucky Charms leprechaun lived in. The guests looked in horror and sadness as they saw the body of the effusive leprechaun floating in the large clover-shaped pool that was located in the courtyard of the luxurious estate. Tony the Tiger, Toucan Sam, Count Chocula, Frankenberry, Buzz the Honey Nut Cheerios Bee, and Snap, Crackle, and Pop all stood silently staring at the corpse. While their first impulse was to consider it an accidental death by drowning, something about the mangled nature of the body didn't add up. Casting even further doubt on the death by drowning theory was the large metal blade protruding from Lucky's back, with blood flowing freely out of the wound and into the pool water. After a long and agonizing silence, Buzz was the first to speak. "Looks like we got ourselves a serial killer on our hands," he giggled. "Buzz, that's not fucking funny," Crackle yelled at the floating bee. "We have to figure out who did this." "Can we make sure he's really dead?" Snap inquired. "I mean, we don't know for sure, do we?" "I don't think he's alive." Toucan Sam flew over the pool to examine the corpse from above. "He's not breathing." He flew back to his room and retrieved a large life preserver shaped like a red Fruit Loop, then tossed it into the pool next to Lucky. But there was no movement from the leprechaun. "Come on, Lucky." The body still did not stir. "He's dead," Tony lamented. "But who would want to kill Lucky?" Count Chocula asked. "Lucky didn't have an enemy in the world." "Well, that's not totally true." Pop shook his head. "I can think of a few people who would have wanted to do away with Lucky." "Like who?" Frankenberry asked as he retrieved a pool skimmer and attempted to push Lucky's body toward the side of the pool for retrieval. "Well, for starters, how about his children? Lucky had quite an estate and lots of estranged children thanks to his fondness for Irish hookers. Those kids always chasing him in the commercials? They were his own offspring. They were always after his lucky child support payments." "Yes, Lucky was loaded," Buzz blurted out. "He had it all. Cash, stocks and bonds, Bitcoin and doubloons, pots of gold, Swiss bank accounts, and real estate investment boons." "But I didn't see any kids come into this house today," Sam interjected. "Or anyone else, for that matter." He paused. "Let's face it. One of us is the killer." The rest of the mascots stood silent for a moment. Finally, Snap ventured a comment. "So, which one of us would have had a motive to kill Lucky? We were all his friends, his most trusted buddies. We've all been through thick and thin together. Whether we work for Kellogg's or General Mills, we've all had the same goal of selling the world's children onto delicious, sugary cereal, so they don't end up with that bland, nutritious oatmeal their parents want them to eat. How could any of us stoop to something like this?" "Well, there's one mascot here I think could have done this," Sam proposed. He pointed at the Frosted Flakes guru. "Tony. He's had it in for the beloved leprechaun for a long time. Hey, I wouldn't kill anybody, Tony protested. Oh, you wouldn't. Frankenberry sneered at the large cartoon tiger. Like you didn't make your displeasure known about Lucky's Asian safaris that you claim are decimating your kind, especially with your criminal history. Remember all those game hunters they found outside your house? Those maulings were expunged from my record. Tony frantically tried to steer the accusations elsewhere. It was probably the toucan who did it. That's right, Buzz agreed. Remember, Sam, how you threatened Lucky on social media and you had to put out a public apology before Kellogg's would let you appear in commercials again? Sam leapt to his own defense. Well, he was nasty to me, too. He said that Fruit Loops were nothing more than gay Cheerios. He should have been kicked off of Twitter, too. He's guilty, Tony exclaimed as the other mascots took a harsh eye to the toucan. Tony, Pop yelled at the tiger. This isn't one of your stupid commercials. Why do you always talk like that? I had a stroke, Tony declared. This is a total witch hunt, Sam screamed. If I killed Lucky, you think I'd just leave his body in the pool for everyone to find? I'm a fucking bird. I could easily take him anywhere to dispose of the evidence. He looked around at his accusers. It was probably Chocula. Lucky had the goods on him, and the Count knew it. The crowd gasped, turning to the chocolatey vampire, who backed away slowly from all of them, except for his ward, Frankenberry. I don't know what you're talking about. I did not do anything. Lucky did not have anything on me. Oh yeah? Sam sneered at the Count. You knew that Lucky knew about your holdings in cocoa production companies operating in West Africa. Lucky knew that you were profiteering from child slave labor, using children to produce the chocolate used in your cereal. He was going to go to the papers about it, and he also knew about your little dalliances with European figures of royalty and your alleged ties to murderous East European strongmen like Vlad the Impaler and Ivan the Terrible. But what really made Lucky decide to come clean with everything he knew about you was a laptop he found in your castle, proving your involvement with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. You, sir, have a long and very bloody history, and Lucky was about to blow it all up for the world to see. That is why you killed him. You seriously did all of that? Snap gaped at Chocula. You should take a good hard look in whatever it is you vampires use instead of a mirror. I did not kill Lucky, the Count vigorously declared. And all that stuff is also a lie. Lucky vanted to frame me because I was always his biggest competition for cereals with marshmallows shaped like weird crap in them. I think we need to examine where the three little elves stand with all this, Frankenberry said. Snap, crackle, and pop. Maybe one of you snapped, then another one of you cackled, and then the third of you popped. Okay, what's our motive? Pop asked belligerently. Lucky and us go back many years. Us little guys gotta stick together, you know? Like you never had it in for the little leprechaun who works for your rival company, Buzz buzzed. He always beat you in the little people's competitions at the breakfast conventions. Plus, his cereal always did better with children aged 6 to 18, especially in those from wealthier households. Snap sniffled. Yes, he was our whimsical little rival. But that doesn't mean any of us would kill him. If it was anybody here who did it, it was probably the pink monstrosity standing over there. Frankenberry frowned as the crowd turned in his direction. Me? Screw you, you little elf. I would never kill Lucky. Oh, yeah? Snap asserted. Like you never got into Lucky's face about all the rumors he spread about you, about the name of your cereal meaning it contained genetically modified berries. Frankenberry shook his head sadly. Yeah, I guess it did hit me below the belt when he told people that. My sales went down over 20% because of him. Also, Lucky did sleep with your wife, Chocula added. She said sex with me was like sleeping with a corpse, Frankenberry cried. Well, I can't help that. I'm made of corpses. The hell was she doing with that little Irish runt anyway? His pecker is probably the size of a matchstick. Whoa, I think we best move on, Sam suggested. Wait a minute, we never talked about Buzz. Our flying friend here had a very good motive to off our beloved leprechaun. Okay, I see where this is going, but I am not the killer, Buzz screamed. Yes, Lucky interfered with my efforts to spread awareness of the threat to honeybees. He'd go around saying horrible things about my people, that we're all dangerous, invasive species who sting people for fun. He kept showing everyone that damn Wu-Tang Clan video where the killer bees attack New York. He even tried to convince Michael Bay to produce an action or horror movie called Night of the Bumblebees. All because my cereal beats his among the 18 to 34 female demographic. That's not the only reason, Sam insisted. It's well known in the industry that Lucky also encouraged the worker bees in your hives to unionize. Apparently, work conditions at your company are so bad that many of your employees have jumped ship to work for Amazon and Walmart. I mean, God forbid you provide your employees with full dental. What the hell do my bees need dental for? Buzz countered. They don't even have teeth. Okay, enough, Crackle yelled. This isn't getting us anywhere. It's clear that almost all of us had a motive to kill Lucky, but obviously only one of us actually did it. We have to start looking for clues. We need to check any video surveillance of the pool, examine Lucky's wounds, get an autopsy done, anything that might clue us in on how and when he died, and who was with him when he expired. No sooner did he finish talking than all the lights went out. The courtyard area was suddenly shrouded in darkness, with none of the mascots being able to see anything, despite some of them normally having excellent night vision. Then, only moments later, the lights came back on as quickly as they turned off. Everyone shrieked in horror as they saw Crackle laying on the ground, covered in blood and not moving. "Crackle!" Snap screamed. "Who did this to you?" "The killer has struck again!" Tony exclaimed. "We have to find out who did this," Toucan yelled. "Everyone, follow my nose and stick together." Suddenly, a voice was heard from inside the house. "Ahem, everyone. If you'll turn your attention to me, I think I know the solution to this perplexing mystery." The gathering turned their heads to see the newcomer, Captain Crunch, emerge from the mansion and into the pool yard. "Captain!" Pop cheered. "What are you doing here?" "I came here earlier, saw what happened, and have been investigating the house ever since," the captain chuckled. "I've become quite adept at sleuthing ever since my court-martial from the Navy forced me into early retirement." "So, who was the killer?" Frankenberry asked. "And was it the same person who murdered Crackle just now?" Crunch took a whiff from his pipe. "Just calm down, and I will explain everything. First, here is an explanation of how it might have happened." How it might have happened. "Tony did it," the captain announced, pointing at the shocked tiger in a fit of rage. Earlier today, he and Lucky were out by the poolside bar making chit-chat, and the conversation turned to health and nutrition. Tony repeatedly mocked the idea of marshmallows being considered a breakfast food, to which Lucky stated that marshmallows may not be a nutritious food, but that Tony was an endangered species and his mother was a whore. Tony immediately and swiftly murdered Lucky, inserted a knife into the body, and threw it into the pool to cover up the telltale slash wounds. and then bribed Buzz to kill the power using his stinger so that he could make an escape under cover of darkness. But when everyone gathered at the pool instead, Buzz had to sneak away in order to cut the electricity. Tony then took advantage of the darkness to kill Crackle before the others could start searching and find out it was him who performed the dastardly deeds. "How dare you! It wasn't me!" Tony exclaimed. "Captain," Buzz belted out, "maybe you should stop with your bullshit detective work and go back to manning those glory holes or whatever else it is you did that got you kicked out of the Navy." Captain Crunch was undeterred. "Those are the facts, I'm afraid. As ugly as they may be, we have a double murderer and an accomplice amongst us right now." "You both are going to jail for this," Snap cried in between shedding tears for his lost companion. "The hell I am," Tony snarled as he bore his fangs belligerently. "You all deed." He leapt up and pounced onto the ground, roaring and throwing his claws aggressively at the other mascots. "You don't want to mess with the eye of this tiger," Buzz declared as he pointed his stinger at the crowd and prepared to dive bomb into them. "'Cause believe me, you won't be a survivor." "Well, this is all a fun little romp," Captain Crunch announced just as the fracas was about to go into full drive. "But it isn't actually how it happened. How about this? How about this?" "Toucan Sam is the culprit," Captain Crunch proclaimed once the mascots were all at his attention again. Lucky was about to publish a memoir detailing Sam's troubled history as a cocaine addict. Sam was afraid the revelation would cause parents to boycott Fruit Loops and tank sales of his product. So he waited until Lucky was alone in the pool yard, then pecked him to death with that long, fruity beak of his. The rest of the mascots were shocked, but Sam did not attempt to deny the accusation. "Well, yes, Lucky did meet his end with me. But aren't you forgetting about your little part in this, oh Captain, my Captain?" When Captain Crunch did not respond, Sam was quick to continue. "When Captain Crunch arrived at the scene, I knew he would figure things out. So, I blackmailed him into covering up this crime by threatening to reveal to everyone his association with Jeffrey Epstein. So while we were all arguing back here, Crunch cut the power so that I could kill Crackle and take the heat off of myself for long enough to smuggle Lucky's body away from the house. But guess what, Captain? Our deal is off. You weren't supposed to reveal yourself in this manner, and now we're both fucked." "I too can. That is so," Captain Crunch proclaimed. "There is indeed a lesson in all this. Blackmail and hidden secrets are tempting to use, but are as dangerous to their wielders as they are to their targets. But do not despair, Toucan, for that is also not how it happened. Here is the real solution to this mystery." What really happened? "No one killed Lucky," the captain announced. "In the interval before his body was discovered by you all, I conducted a thorough examination. Though it may look like foul play, his death was actually caused by drowning as a result of acute alcohol poisoning, brought about by his ethnicity, as well as his despondency over losing yet another child paternity case, this time to a Brooklyn mother of 4. The rest of the serial mascots murmured. "But then why was the body still in the pool, with the knife in his back, when we found him?" Frankenberry asked. Suddenly Crackle rose to his feet, brushing himself off as he laughed. "Thank the captain's cunning for that one," he cackled as Captain Crunch glared at him with eyes wide open. "Crackle, what the hell, man? You totally stuck the knife in my back." "Give it a rest, Cap. You did that yourself." Crackle started licking up the ketchup he had covered himself with as part of the ruse. After the autopsy, Captain Crunch put the knife in Lucky's back and threw it into the pool to make the scene look like murder, sullying the reputation of the other cereal mascots enough to make people forget about his court-martial, which was hurting sales of Crunch Berries. I was in on the scheme as well, because he promised to help me convince the bigwigs at Kellogg's to bring back Rice Krispie Treats cereal, which we all know was the bomb. So I faked my death in order to make it look like a double homicide and allow Captain to declare himself a hero for solving the mystery. Plus, it would have allowed me to cash in on a very lucrative life insurance policy once I resurfaced under the brand name Rice Titties, the world's first pornographic cereal. Then why did you just blow it all right now? The captain seethed. You and I were gonna be rich beyond our wildest dreams. I had second thoughts lying down here just now. I realized that no one really wants boobs in their breakfast cereal. Crackle shrugged. So sue me. The rest of the mascots simply stood in silence for a moment. Captain Crunch decided to slip away quietly, to which no one else took notice. As the evening turned into full-on nighttime, they still stood in the pool yard without making a sound. Well, Buzz finally said, anyone want to go over to the Trix Rabbit's house? He texted me that he just made some brownies that are very much not for kids.